Hello and welcome everybody to the case study in analyzing the use of the future constructions going to and will. This is part two. So in part one, we looked at how to extract the different forms in AntConc, and also we post-tagged the data using TagAnt. In this part, we're going to do the data processing, and in part three, we'll do the analysis, right? But we'll already do a little bit of the analysis here, but not the main part of the analysis. So what you should be left with after the first part is basically all these TXT files, right? So the Excel spreadsheets is what we're going to basically create today. Because I've already done it before, you already see that I've got versions of them. But what we now need to do is we just open the results, and then we enter them into our spreadsheet. We add a column called ID, and then we create running numbers, right? And now what we're going to do is we're going to just add the other tables to the end and delete this row, which is just the headers, and we can drag down the ID. Now going to in the lob, again, scroll down to the end, delete the row with column headers, and then we start with the will. Right? So again, I scroll to the end, delete the header, and so on, right? So this is what we're going to do now, right? Again, same thing. We delete that row and one more left. All right. So now we have the concordance tables here. Next, I'm just going to make it a little bit easier for myself. So I'm going to freeze the top row. So when I scroll down, everything's still all right. I'm going to adapt the column width, and here I'll make it a little bit shorter. Yeah, I'll also make it a little bit shorter. Now I'm going to call this token. You'll see why later. Then I'm going to create one column here. No, let's put it here. So here I'll call this variant. That's our variant. And here I'm going to call that the variety. So you can already guess what I want to do. So here I'm going to say going, and I'll drag that down, up, and back up. Need to go where have that. All right. And then here I'll have will. So it's just a cleaned version of the variant that we're looking for. And we're analyzing two variants, right? The will and the going to future. So it's just two variants that we're looking at. Okay, cool. So in the next step here with variety, we'll go to replace, and there's an underscore, and then we want to delete everything that comes after. So I'm just going to replace them all. Okay. And then we're going to order by variety. Order by variety. And then ACE is our Australian English section. We'll just, oh, too far. And brown is our American English. corpus, back that down. Oh, in the wrong pane here. So here we go. And then lob is our British English corpus. All right. Cool. So now we've got two clean columns with variant and with variety. So here, what we're going to do next is we're going to sort by what's coming to the right. Oh, first, actually, I'm going to order by token and then by context. Right, because this way we can easily identify things that we don't want, right? So church going is something that we don't want. And also where going is a noun. Don't need that. We also don't need things where there's no to. So all of these things we don't need. Going away, going back. All of these things going into, going on. So all things we don't need. Going out, going over, going through. And here, going to, it's going to dinner. That's not the to future. So what we're looking for are things I'm going to, well, that's actually not the instance. Here, so here it starts going to reply, going to do, going to achieve, going to act, going to afternoon service. That's also a 0. Right, so now what we're identifying is whether what we're looking at is actually something that's relevant for us, right? So that's very important because this way we filter out instances of going and of will that we don't need. So here mostly we're looking at going as a gerund, to with a to, and then form of a verb form, right? So to is fine. I'm going to do. Going to fight. Free is going to get. Going to happen. Going to have. Going to marry, miss, moon. Provide, to call, to say, to see, to take, to turn, to work. That's all good. And then here, we see again that here we now have instances where we're not talking about the future construction. Going well, going with, ongoing, undergoing. So these are all instances that we can ignore. So that's why I say hit 0, right? And here with will, we also need to check whether these are things that we can consider. So here it's more difficult, right? Because when we have negation, we would say, I'm not going to go to school, right? With will, it can be different because I will not go to school. So there's more elements in between the will and the verb that we're interested in, right? Will be dark, will be granted, will be related, will encourage. So these are all future constructions. So here we can actually say that these are instances. Will that we want, will not be, will not have, will not then shut, will thus have, will be, will move, want. But here again, um, we have these symbols that will continue, will coordinate, will evaluate, put, will soon allow. All right. So then here we'll also mess with such. So here we have instances we don't need. We'll be combating. And then here we have, again, instances of will that we don't need, or at least not in the form and the construction that we're going to look at. Will provide and will should and have. And these are all instances that we don't need. Yeah, again, it starts with absorb, will accelerate, will accept, will accommodate. It's all good. This is prototypical, right? Like will and then the verb form. Or here you have an adverb in between. The the So in this case, I should also mention that I don't expect this to be super clean just because this is an example study. If you really did this as a proper research project, then you need to really check this very, very carefully, right? But given that, oh, will it be? Okay, so these are actually things will issue. These are things where we can actually with this. Will it be? Jill. Oh, right. Here we can go back. Oh, sorry. Although I'm just doing it a little bit superficially, you still should make it properly, right? So, well, not super properly, but so that you understand what this is about, which is to filter out instances that we don't need. Right, so this is just our first. I should look at this, will she? Yeah. So here we have other instances where there's personal pronoun. Not that many, actually. Very rare. Forward support. Let's take, will that we're not interested in the question. But here again, we have instances. Okay, so here we continue. Well, then we for will, it's a lot more tricky. We're going to actually do more rounds of checking. I'll try to understand absolutely very the win. Will you? So here now, go now. Indicating that we're dealing with a question, which is not what we're interested in here. Okay, we don't need the will. That's a noun. So this was our first kind of approach, right? Now, another thing we can do is we can sort, custom sort, and then we're going to say token, right context, but we'll make it case sensitive, right? And actually we won't, that we can keep it. But the idea is that now we can filter out things that are capitalized. Right, going back. So all these, we already have these as zeros. Here's two more. Going on, ongoing. Okay. So here the capitalized will be at the end. Indicates that there's actually at the beginning of a word, of a sentence. So we can again right. So we've moved that. All right. So now you would do that in a proper study. You do that very extensively and really try to weed out things that are not necessary, right? Or that are not actually fits. So here we're going to remove one, and then we're going to say we're going to order by hit, because what we're going to do now is we're going to copy our table, and then we're going to scroll down to where the zeros start. Yep. And we can then delete that. So I made a copy because you never actually delete anything, right? You basically copy what you have, and then in the new spreadsheet, you can remove things. So just to get an overview of where we're at the moment, we will create a pivot table here at the very top by saying insert pivot table from table range. That's right, existing worksheet. We're going to go there. Okay. And then here, we're going to say we want the variant in the rows, the variety in the columns, and we can say hit as values, some of it. So that already gives us an idea of how frequent things are, right? So I'm going to copy this table, enter it as values, and this is my variant, right? And then we have the varieties here. And now we can copy this table again. and say this, sorry, we want this to be this value divided by this value plus this value, and then times 100, and that will give us the percentage. I'm also going to round this to 1 decimal, right? So 9.2% are here. And then we need to change that, right? Because here we need to add that, right? So this is then 9, 10, and now we have the percentage values, right? And you can see that will is about 90% in all of the varieties, and going to is about 9 to 10%, right? You can then visualize this, creating a chart. I'm going to go for this chart here to basically be able to show the distribution better. Here, this is the percentage of going to and will futures in American English, Australian English, and British English. Then I'm going to form the axis. The maximum should be 100 because we're dealing with percent. That's fine. All right. We're going to add axis titles, of course. This is percent. It's very self-explanatory, so I'm going to delete that one. And then we're going to add data labels. I'm going to change the color, make this lighter, a little darker. And that would be our first table where we analyze the will futures in these 3 varieties, right? You can see that they are very similar in their use. Okay, so that would be a first step, right? In the next step, the question is, okay, what verbs are actually associated with will and going to? Like, are there certain verbs that prefer the will future? And are there other verbs that prefer the going to future? And in addition, we'll have a look at negation, right? So maybe negation is also preferred by one of the constructions. So what we're going to do is we're going to check the verb. For that, I'm going to copy this column in here. And then I'm going to say find and select. I'm going to replace. And then I want everything after VB be removed. So here I'm going to say replace everything with V. Because that's, sorry, that was not so clever. Because that also has a VB, right? So actually we want VB and a space, and then everything is replaced after that. Right, so now the last word here is the verb that we're interested in, right? Oh, most of the time. And so we can say remove everything before a space. So we're going to do that now. And that means that we already have relatively clean data. And now I want to get rid of the underscore. And so now we have an overview of the verbs that are modified. All right. Okay. In the next step, so we're not going to call it context, we're going to call it verb. And then we're going to add another column where we, no, I'm not going to do that. I think we'll leave it with a verb for the moment, right, for this case, but otherwise it would become too complex. So now I'm going to copy my table again. Remember, that was not what I wanted. What's going on now? Going to copy on that, put it into a new table, right? And now I should only have going to in the varieties, and then I have the verb, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, need to help a little bit. And create another pivot table from range existing worksheet. So I'm just going to move over a little bit. So, okay. So now what I want to have is I want to have the verbs, right? And I do that just to see if there's stuff that I need to clean. So we already saw that there are things that we don't need that are actually not good instances. So you, for example. So what we'll do now is that we have an overview. We can use this to arrange our table. Sort by verb. So here I'm going to delete these two columns. That's up. Okay. And then we can actually refresh this and we can see if now the data has become cleaner. So the B, so we see that there's a B with a minus. So we can go down now to B, and the B with the minus should be after the B. Yeah. If this go up, we say fresh. It's better now. It's not perfect, but it's all right. So we can also do something here where we say replace, just say if there's a minus, replace that. Again, go up here, say refresh. This it's not perfect, but if we look at the verbs, it should be all right-ish. So up, need to check what's going on with the up. Pretty far down, I guess. So here it's actually made as the verb. Right? Because it's that one here, that with up. Is this something that we don't need? So we're going to delete that. Want to shift up. And what we have here with you is also something we don't need. And then what's going on here? Going to bad, going to bad. Oh, this gets rid. Going to have, has. All right. So here, we've actually identified lots of stuff that we don't need really. I'm going to also delete these. So this has helped us clean actually. More for data. Awesome. Right. So now we should have relatively clean data. And then here we have the values, count of values. So this is the count of verb, right? But we also want variety, obviously. Go this into the columns. Right, so now we have the frequencies of all the verbs in these varieties. Okay, now I'm going to do something else. Namely, we need the zeros here, right? So here I'm going to say this if this, oh, can't do that. All right. Need to copy it first. All right. So I'm going to copy it. Fair enough. Let's do that again. Sorry. Right. And now what we want is we want to have zeros where there's nothing, right? So what we're going to say is equals if this is empty, then 0 else cell, which is R4. Let's see if that works. Right, and now we can drag it over. And now we should be able to drag this down to the end of the table. Okay, cool. So now we have the values, but with zeros when they're empty cells. We can just copy this. Go back up. Paste in as values. And this is our American English, Aussie English, British English. Oh, darn. I just forgot something. That was really stupid. Okay, we actually have to do that again because we need the variant, of course, right? That was really unfortunate. Because of course, we need to know whether that was in will or going to. Right. It needs to go over there. So we need to do this for going to. But we need to do the same thing again. Very sorry about that. Just forgot that. Actually, just going to do it like this. This also happens to me. So this is going to. This is our American English, Aussie English, British English. And then we're going to copy the entire table. Now, always has problems with that. It's just a little fiddly. Works fine. Well, it's just a little fiddly. Copy that in here. And then we say equals if plus equals if this is empty and 0 else W5. And then we drag it over and then drag down. Perfect. Then we can actually just copy this and add it as a value. Perfect. And then we don't need this anymore. But what we're going to do is we'll do it separately. Right, we can just take this column. Right. And then I'm going to move over here. No. This will just be equals if this is empty and 0 else W5. And again, I can drag it over and I can pull it down. Copy this. Access values. Perfect. Then here we don't need that. This is our verb. This is our will. This is also our verb. So now we've got the tables for the verbs that go with will and going to, all right, in the varieties. Perfect. Right. Good. still more things to do. So what is the next thing we need to do? Next thing we need to do is to go back, because we've extracted all the verbs here, right? Because we're not only interested in if verbs are more frequent with one future form of or another, we want to see if the verbs are attracted to the future forms overall, right? And for that, we need how often that verb occurs overall in that corpus. And remember, that's why we had, this is why we have extracted all verbs, right? So here we're going to enter the verb forms here. So we're done with the going to and will table, but now we need to add all the verbs. And this table will be a little bit longer, obviously. But this will then give us the option to check how frequent different verbs are in the corpora, which is why this step is also important. But don't worry, this will actually be a lot easier than the previous step. The previous step was more time consuming. All right. So we've got this. I'm going to make this big. I'm going to freeze panes. Oh no, I don't want that. Oh. Freeze panes, freeze top row, perfect. Right. So I'm going to adapt the length. I'm making this shorter, making this shorter too. And we only need this one, right? Because we want to know what is the verb before the hit, right? That's what we're interested in here. And we also need file. So first is I'm going to copy file. And for file, I'm going to call it variety again. And then here, I want to replace. So everything after an underscore, replace all. Awesome. And now we can arrange that table by variety, which means this is our Australian English. Scroll up. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that in a little bit different way. Replace. You see ace, then right. Otherwise, would be too much work. Round 2 will be me. And lob will be BIE. Okay, so we got that. We can actually check that later, right? And now we're going to take this and we're going to say this is our verb, because we just need to remove everything that's before a white space. And that should leave us with the verbs, right? We're going to remove underscore. Okay. Good. And now we can actually highlight this. Insert pivot table from table range, existing worksheet. Just put it here. And I want the variety between the columns, verb be here, and also we have the columns. And then you see that there's actually stuff that is not very nice, right? So we still need to remove things. And so there's lots of numbers and stuff that we can get rid of. So that means that in verb, if there's a 0, replace it with nothing. If there's a 1, replace it with nothing. If it's a 2, replace it with nothing. If it's a 3, replace it with nothing. If it's a 4, replace it. If it's a 5, replace it. If it's a 6, replace it. If it's a 7, replace it. If it's an 8, replace it. And if it's a 9, replace it, right? If it's a minus, replace it. It's a plus. Also replace it. Then you can refresh it. And it's not perfect, right? But should already be better. It hasn't worked. So we still see that there's a couple of problems, right? Okay, now, I want to find out something else, namely, I'm using ChatGPT. Let me actually show you this here real quick. Right? So that is something I can delete. Let's say I have got an Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and one column is with text. How can I identify all cells in the text column that have a capital letter? Right, so actually, I just want this. So let's see if that works, because you might know we're going to G2. That should not be yes. If extract upper G2, and G2 there is no upper, that formula doesn't quite work, right? What happens if I make this capital? Well, the same. ChatGPT, you lied. Let's use this. Maybe I made a mistake in not reading the full answer. Right. Let's see. I capitalize this. There's a 1 now. No, no, that's not good. I remember there was something. Insert a new column next to a column where display the results. Apply the format first cell of the new column. This format checks the text in the cell A1 exactly the same when converted to uppercase. If it is, that means there's no capital letter. So trends no, otherwise it turns yes, check the formula, right? Identify all cells in the text column that have at least one capital letter. It should still work, right? Let's see. Try this again. So it only tells me when it's completely, when all are upper. Right. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and I'll find a solution real quick. And I'll be with you in a moment. Okay, so formula was almost right? So here I'm going to say not exact lower G2, G2. So this gives me false if there's no capital letter. Now, if I add a capital letter, it will return true, right? So that is essentially what we want here. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it as values. And then I'm going to order that. No, I'm going to do that by test. And I'm going to the largest, smallest. All right. So here we have all these verbs with capitals in them. I don't like that. I want them to be, I'll just say, make them. Should I just make them lowercase? I should maybe just make them lowercase. That might be better. So I could say probably to lower. In another moment. Yes, why is it not working? Just make it to lowercase now. What's the problem? Okay, need to stop again. I'll be back in a moment. Super easy fix. It just needed to be lower instead of too lower. Right, so I'm going to do that. And that should actually get rid of many of the problems that we have here. So I'm going to refresh. And before I do that, I need to, of course, include it here. And then say that, then refresh. And it's much better now. Not perfect. We still have some instances where there's nothing. All right. So because of that, we're going to order a verb. Just say A to Z, fine. And that way we can also get rid of all the instances where we actually do not have something identified. Weird things. That's also something we don't want. Right, so let's clean that up. Delete 1 to shift up. So Mars still fine, March Sun. Yeah, a little bit of that's fine. All right, but now we have essentially a table of the verbs in these three corpora. Okay, so we go to the very end. Just let me see where it is. Come on. They're not perfect. We still have some issues, but overall it's doing all right. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and test values. Right, this is our verb. American English, British English, blank, we don't need blank, and we don't need the grand total. So this can actually go. Cool. And then we can just say equals if this is empty, say 0, else say 4. Pull it over. And that allows us to fill all the values that are empty with zeros. Copy this. Paste values, perfect, right? So now we have the table of verbs in the corpora. We have the table of the verbs that occur with, going to, and will. And that is the pre-processing. In the next part, what we'll do is we'll then perform the analysis. So we'll merge the tables and then calculate association measures. And then in the very last step, we might actually visualize the results. But now basically that's it for the data cleaning. So the first part was extraction. This part is processing. The next part is analysis. All right, that's it for this second part of the case study. And I'll see you again in part 3.